It literally writes a check from an account that has no money in it. So when the Fed writes the check, the money, poof, it appears. And this money is injected into the financial system. So this is extremely inflationary. So nearly $9 trillion in quantitative easing over those 4 rounds after the Great Recession and then during the pandemic. Now, along with that, it also slashed interest rates to zero for the first time ever back in 2008. And rates didn't lift off of zero until December 2015, 7 years later. We had 7 years of 0% interest rates, 7 years of bonds yielding less than zero. When you calculate the real interest rate, when you factor in inflation, there was all of this paper, not just in the United States, but around the world, trillions of dollars of negatively yielding bonds. Again, not normal. Okay, so by 2018, the Fed had only managed to push interest rates back to 2.5%. That's a decade after the financial crisis and the Great Recession. 2.5%, that's all they got to. At that point, the economy went sideways. If you remember back to 2018, that fall, the stock market crashed. And by 2019, the Fed had cut interest rates 3 times. It ended balance sheet reduction. It abandoned all efforts to normalize monetary policy. And this was before COVID reared its ugly head. And I think that's important because a lot of people, I think, kind of believe, well, things were going along fine and, we were recovering from the Great Recession. Then we had this pandemic and then the Fed had to, it was an emergency and we had to do all of this monetary policy again. But that's not what happened. The Fed was doing easing before COVID, an entire year before COVID. The pandemic gave the central bank an excuse to slash rates to zero again. I think the pandemic kind of bailed out the Fed, right? Because all of the malfeasance from the Great Recession was starting to bubble up in the economy. Those consequences were starting to manifest. And so the Fed was trying to blow air back into the bubble even before the pandemic. The pandemic allowed them to do that.